What's up, everybody? Good late afternoon or early evening. We're not getting an injury report today, it looks like, because the game is on Monday. So, in the absence of an injury report, I want to talk about something a little different. And this is going to go under silver linings. This is going to go as a Seahawks silver lining as we go through this 4 game losing streak and try to find something that isn't just painful and depressing. So, here's what I got. Last year, the Seattle Seahawks had Sean Desai on their coaching staff, and I said many times that Sean Desai was a guy whose star was on the rise in the NFL. He was a guy who had been brought up in some really good coaching trees. He was a guy who had shown some real promise at his initial career stops. And I said that Sean Desai was one of those young guys who just had future good NFL head coach written all over him. And I said that Sean Desai was very likely going to be the next Seahawks head coach after Pete Carroll. He was a logical heir apparent. He would stay on the staff for a couple of years, and Carroll would either retire or move on or whatever, and Sean Desai would be your next Seahawks head coach. That's the way it seemed like it was going to go. Well, Sean Desai had a bad season last year for Seattle, and last year, after the season was over, he went to Philadelphia to be their defensive coordinator. So even though things didn't go well in Seattle, you did see that Sean Desai was still coveted. The Eagles, a team that had just gone to the Super Bowl, had hired him as kind of a promotion because he was not the defensive coordinator here. He was it was a little bit complicated, but he was like an assistant defensive coordinator slash assistant head coach. They kind of created a role for him specifically, and it didn't go well. But the Eagles didn't think it was a reflection of him, and they decided to basically offer him a promotion when they brought him on to be their defensive coordinator to replace Jonathan Gannon. And I was really upset about that loss. I thought it was a big loss. I was very disappointed. I thought Sean Desai had a bright future in front of him, and I wanted it to be in Seattle. And I was bummed that it only lasted 1 year, and I thought maybe it was a poor reflection on the way he was treated. Maybe we didn't give him the power that he thought he was going to have. And now, several months later, I can sit here and say that thankfully, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong because it looks like Sean Desai is just bad. And I wasn't comfortable saying that after one bad year in Seattle where he wasn't even the cook in the kitchen. He wasn't even the main or even the second cook in the kitchen. But now I feel fairly comfortable. Sean Desai is the defensive coordinator for the Eagles. He's working under an offensive-minded head coach in Nick Sirianni. So it's hard to blame anybody else. And the Philadelphia Eagles defense is probably the most inexcusably bad defense in the NFL right now, even over the Seahawks. You go to ESPN, you sort every team by points allowed per game. The Eagles are behind the Seahawks. They have allowed more points in the same number of games. The Seahawks are 27th in points allowed per game. The Eagles are 28th. So Sean Desai went to Philadelphia, joined up with a far more talented roster. And I say that thinking that the Seattle defensive roster was moderately talented last year. It wasn't devoid of talent. It had some good stuff, but on the whole, you can do better. He did do better, and the results are worse. So at the end of the day, Sean Desai I guess he's just not that good. So on this front, I was wrong. He was not a big loss. In fact, it's probably better for everyone involved, in Seattle anyway, that he did move on. So Sean Desai, I don't mean to kick a man when he's down, but I'm looking for silver linings here as a Seahawks fan. I can say this. Losing Sean Desai was not something to be upset over. So I missed on this one. I thought his star was on the rise. His star has gone supernova black hole on us. And I mean that in the bad way. Because you look at that Eagles roster, and you take a look at the players that they have. You take a look at the way they've stacked up that defensive line, stacked up that front. Brandon Graham, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat on the front lines. Jalen Carter and Hassan Reddick get involved off the bench as well. You've got Even a guy like Moro Ojomo was a guy that I liked in the draft, and I liked that addition by the Eagles. You've got guys like Shaquille Leonard that they added. You've got guys like Kevin Beard that they added at the trade deadline. Like I said, Hassan Reddick. You've got James Bradbury. I know their corners have had some injury issues this year, but you've got Reed Blankenship. He's kind of come out of nowhere to become a really good player. You've got Zach Cunningham as well. I know he's past his prime, but still a good player. Darius Slay is still in Philly. They've got guys like Bradley Roby. This is a very talented defense. The front line alone should make them one of the better defenses in the NFL. And despite the fact that they do have a pretty good offense backing them up, despite the fact that the Eagles' offense is productive, they do score, they do produce. The defense can't stop anything. Their defense is actually worse than ours, and I think they have more talent. I don't know if they do for sure. Some of these guys are big names that might be past their prime, but it sure looks like they have better players to me. Not to say that we're better off with Clint Hurt right now, because Clint Hurt looks pretty overwhelmed at the moment, and he's doing well, you can't really call it a good job when the results are like this. There's no way you can say that Clint Hurt is doing well when we've had 2 straight years of a historically bad Pete Carroll defense. But I can now say that we are better off without Desai being part of our long-term plans anyway. So I'm going to call that another Seahawks silver lining right now. And we're reaching here, right? Like, this is borderline preying on somebody else's misery here. Like, Philly looks like they got a little bit of a dud. Sean Desai is not living up to the legacy of Jonathan Gannon at all. And the Eagles fans mostly didn't even like Jonathan Gannon that much. So that's saying something. But yeah, I guess at the very least we decided to go in a different direction. I don't know if that different direction is better, and I don't know if it can ever get better as long as Pete Carroll's here, because at the end of the day, it is Pete Carroll's defense. But my fear was that Sean Desai was a really good assistant head coach, or excuse me, assistant coach, positional coach, or coordinator that wasn't going to be utilized properly, and then he'd go somewhere else and prove that he's actually really good. That hasn't happened, so my only conclusion here is that he's just not the guy. And while I'm hoping that at some point in the near future we can find the guy that isn't a Pete Carroll hire, somebody who will bring something new to the table, at least we can now safely conclude that Sean Desai was not some great miss on our part when we were only able to keep him for 1 year. You've got this roster, you've got to produce good results, and his results have actually been disastrous. Like, this is one of the worst defenses in the league. I don't think there's any other way to put it. All right, so let me know what you think about that. I'm trying to find things to be positive about. I'm trying to be happy about something. And again, the team makes it tough, but I think that this is at least something we can say we didn't miss out on. It's kind of like looking at all the free agents we lost last offseason, like Rashad Penny, Travis Homer, Ryan Neal, and see they're not doing anything with their new teams, and you're like, well, I guess we don't at least miss any of those guys. Like, yeah, on one hand, you're kind of taking shots at guys when they're down, but on the other hand, like, there's only a limited amount of happiness in the world. You got to grab onto your share of happiness and not let it go. And sometimes somebody else is trying to get it from you. You can't let them take it. And I promise that made sense in my head. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. Maybe you got a different perspective. Maybe Sean Desai is good, and this Philly roster just maybe that's not the maybe that's the problem. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. Just trying to prep us up a little bit for that Eagles matchup on Monday. That will kind of be the tipping point for the season. See you guys later.